Hi everyone, good morning. So I decided to do my John Maxwell sitting here in the sun at home, and it's such a nice day here. When I initially had come to Canada, my dream was to work in consulting, to work in EY or Accenture or one of those big companies, because I liked the appeal of traveling, of going to different places and working in different companies. And now I have lost that appeal. I'm not interested in it anymore. Mainly because I've met a lot of consultants from Accenture, from Deloitte, from different companies, and I've helped to do the setup for them when I was working in the banks and other companies. And all of them have told me that if they had to do it over, they wouldn't choose it. And I was like, why? You get paid good money, you have good perks, you get all the benefits, you get to work on different assignments. And they're like, yeah, but it's not all that great. We'll end up working overnight, we'll end up sitting in airports for hours. And I met one guy, and this is all in Canada, and he was telling me that he was working in America, and the stress got so much he ended up having a heart attack, and they had to fly him using a supersonic jet back to Canada. So that really put me off, because I thought, you know what, that's not what life is about. Yes, you want to earn your money, you want to do well, you want to own your home, but if you're just going to give up your health, and that's exactly what happened to me, because I got pushed from one contract to the next contract, and it was all 3 to 6 months work, and it really isn't fun. There's nothing fun about it in working for different companies, going from one culture to the next culture, and not having any stability, not having any upward mobility in your career, not having any increases in your wages. There's nothing fun about that side of it either. But there doesn't seem to be any balance. It's either feast or famine in Canada. You either have work and you'll get well paid for 3 to 6 months, and then you'll have nothing. Or if you want a stable job, you'll have a stable job, but you'll be earning peanuts, not even enough to pay your rent and buy food and to make ends meet. And I thought I had left that behind. When I left Africa, when I left Zimbabwe, I thought I was coming here for a better life, only to find that we are a socialist country and there's a lot of communist influences here. So if you are at the top of the food chain, if you're the CEO or if you're in senior management, then you earn very well. If you're a professor or a teaching assistant, but if you're like me and you're highly qualified and you make things better for others, your life doesn't get better. So for me, the contract is broken, which is also partly why I'm doing this John Maxwell. And I'm finding out that actually I'm on the right path, but my life is not getting any better. So obviously the social contract is broken in this country. And the chapter I read today was on the law of addition. So basically John Maxwell was looking at how we serve others, how we help others. And he touched on the example of Malala Yousafzai. And she's somebody that is an activist, and her desire to be educated. And out of her story and serving others, she was selected for the Nobel Peace Prize. So that happens too. With me, I was a nominee for the Canada 150 Award, and I was a finalist for that. But in all of this, it's not completely altruistic. We have our own goals, we have our own dreams, our own desires, and people like to make it seem like, oh, people are selfless, but actually we're not. If you don't value your own life, and if you don't value who you are first, you can't value others. If you look at Mandela and you look at Ahmed Kathrada and you look at all these people, They had a desire for their own lives to work, to be respected, to be treated as professionals, whether they were lawyers or whether they were teachers or whatever they did. They wanted people to treat them with that same dignity that the whites got treated with, and not to have separate toilets, not to have separate schools, not to have subclass treatment. And that's what I grew up with in Zimbabwe, in Rhodesia. They used to bring us that brown soup in the junior school. That soup was like water. It was so thin, you got hardly any nutrients from it. And they used to give us a packet of milk. Yes, the milk was the same because everybody used to buy that same milk in the stores. But we were not treated as equal. And then you come here and you ask for special treatment, you ask for a bit of help, and you get told, like me by Teresa Bowman, that you have an attitude of entitlement. I was just like, okay, whatever. You think how you want to think because you have not lived anywhere else. You're not even interested in getting to know my story, my journey. You're not even interested in knowing how I grew up, what I want to do, what I want to accomplish. So I used to just stop talking. And even when I work at Teleperformance, I don't talk. I just go in, I do my job, and I leave it because they're not interested. So there's an example here of Costco. I'm sure people know Costco in Canada. People who in Zimbabwe who are watching my posts, and the Netherlands and Australia, my friends who are there, Costco is a retail store. So it's a big box store where you can go in and you can buy anything from eggs and meat and furniture to books. And it's set up in a way that you're buying in bulk, so you buy at a discount. And it works for families. When I came here, I had taken out a Costco membership when I was living with my sister because they were a family of 4. So I thought that will help us. And when I moved out, I left it with them because for me, for one person, it doesn't make sense. There's only so much I need on a monthly basis, but for families, it makes sense. So the CEO of Costco had set up this company in such a way that he put the employees first. He made sure they were well paid. He made sure they had vacation time. He made sure that his salary was not over 300 times more than what the person on the floor was earning. And he had an open door policy. So he wasn't like the Wall Street bankers who are only interested in that Monday to Thursday, what they're going to make. He was interested in building a long-term successful company. And Costco still exists today. You can find it across Canada because of that philosophy, because he wasn't interested in making 13 million a year, while the person on the floor who is serving your customers like me and doing all the work is earning $11 an hour. Because that's the reality. Whether you're in banking or whether you're in another field, that's how the companies are being run today. So this great reset, which this World Economic Forum had told us we would all like, was not supposed to hurt us the way it's hurt us. It was supposed to be that the people at the top, the politicians, the CEOs, the people making their 300,000 or 13 million a year, they were the ones who were supposed to understand what the initiative was. But in fact, it landed up having the opposite effect. And on top of that, we had COVID. So many of us had our savings wiped out. Many of us are not earning what we were earning pre-COVID. And companies are not giving wage increases. So how can you survive on $11.25 a year, an hour? How are you supposed to survive on that in Toronto? And these companies are making millions. They're multi-billion-dollar companies, but they will not fork out that money to have educated people stay with them, to have reliable people stay with them. They will not accommodate people, and they will not do what they need to do So that's why we have the situation we have now. And he gives an example in this chapter here where he talks about motives matter, because people take jobs for granted. I don't take my job for granted. And he gives an example here where he's giving a talk and he's saying those people looked uncomfortable when John Maxwell was speaking. So he says, yes, they probably did look uncomfortable, because probably more than half those people killed someone to obtain their current position of power. Because people have a lot of power when they are in supervisory roles, where they are making the hiring and firing decisions. They're basically controlling our lives. They have the power to have access to your social media. Even if you put it to only your friends, the companies have power to go in there, check your social media. They have power to have you tracked overseas for nothing. You can have done nothing to them, but because they want it, they can do it. That's the power they have. And it shouldn't be that way. But that's the reality of the world that we are living in. So people have to choose. These CEOs and all of them, they have to choose. Do they want to continue having companies where the CEO is earning 13 million a year and the people on the floor are earning, like me, 11.25 an hour? Or do they want to have a society that's flourishing? Because all this crime and all the things that are happening now, Canada never used to be like this. It never used to be as bad as it is now. Because people can't get jobs. They don't truly value us. And then they say, oh, you have to care, but they don't care. They're doing it because it makes business sense to them. If they had any sense, they would do the accommodations, they would pay people well, they would make sure that their employees had enough to live comfortably. But they don't value people because it makes business sense. It's not for them. It's not about caring. That's why we have compliance, and we have compliance in place. Because people here are not interested in about caring. They are valuing their own families. It's just like how I got let go from one of my jobs because somebody had a sick wife at home and they took their frustration out on me and told me, oh, we don't like your attitude. So they woke up one day and decided they didn't like my attitude. So why did you hire me? You saw my personality at the interview. You saw how I worked for 6 months. And one day you decided you didn't like my attitude. Does it make sense? We make ourselves valuable to others by what we do for others, whether it's in our volunteering or whether it's in contributing to society or standing up for ourselves. Because in our tradition, in our scriptures, we believe you love others as you love yourself. So if you don't love yourself, if you hate yourself, how are you going to love the next person? It's virtually impossible. And then the third point, know and relate to what others value. And again, this depends on what others value. So others may value selling marijuana. Others may value selling illegal drugs. Does that mean that I have to value it too? We have to make evaluated decisions. We have to make critical decisions about what we are supporting or not supporting. And there's another example he gives here about how when visitors came to see the CEO of Costco, he would go down and meet him or meet her himself. Now, where I come from, that would be considered very disrespectful. So there's a cultural component. Because when I worked as an executive assistant in Zimbabwe, it was my honor, it was my privilege to go and meet the guests, welcome them, and then bring them to the office of the CEO or the general manager. And my managers liked me to do that because that made them see that I represent that person and I represent that company. So again, you have to evaluate what is it that you are trying to do. Because I remember when I started working here, there was one situation where the executive was having a meeting, and I said, I'll go and bring the person in to meet with you for the interview. And the executive said, no, I'll go and do it myself. So I was like, okay. I was taken aback. But again, this is cultural. So for me, coming from Zimbabwe, I was kind of surprised that they wanted to go and do it themselves. But that's why we educate ourselves. That's why I'm reading, because I've been hurt too many times. Because people are not interested in learning about my story. They're not interested in learning about my culture, what I value. So I have to learn what they value and what they want so that I don't get hurt. And so that other migrants who come in, they can also learn. Because I can tell you now, whichever migrants I talk to, whichever people I talk to, the culture here is the complete opposite of the culture in the African countries or the European countries. It's the complete opposite. So it's very, very hard. And then he makes the point about when we help others, we can see them as weak. And that's true of the African culture. Right? It's like, oh, you need help. You can't figure it out. You can't do it yourself. Shame, let me help you. But actually, sometimes when you ask for help, it can be because there's value in that. You have to be courageous to ask for help because not everybody can do it. And once we see that we're adding value to others and we're helping others, then it becomes contagious because then everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to do what you are doing. And then other people start helping in their communities, and that's how things change. And that's how things multiply. But it's still true that you cannot get to the top of the hill yourself without helping others. When you're helping somebody else climb the hill and you're doing it together, it's much easier than doing it on your own. So that's why when I join the John Maxwell calls, when I listen into the questions people are asking, because I don't come from a culture where I'm encouraged to ask questions. It's like, we'll tell you if you need to know. Or that's the kind of culture. Whereas here in North America, people are asking us or saying, well, ask the question. Or what question do you want me to ask? I never grew up in a culture where I had to ask a question. Or they'll say, that's a good question. Let me tell you this. And you watch the news here, or you watch the talk shows, things like that. You listen to how people talk. That's how they talk to us on the phones in customer service. Let me ask you a question. Or they'll say, hang on. Hold on, let me finish speaking. That's how they talk. So there are cultural differences between here and Africa that are very, very abrasive for somebody like me. It's very hurtful. But if you learn to understand the culture and if you learn to watch them, that's why I watch the news. Do I like watching the news? Not really. Most of the time it's bad news. But I watch it to learn, to see how they are, how they talk, how they dress. That's why I watch. And also to see, sometimes on the news they'll have things like they'll tell us which products have been taken off the shelves or being returned or are unsafe to eat or drink. I watch that because one time I ordered from Amazon, I ordered this orange drink that you can mix with water and you can keep it in the fridge. And when I opened it, I noticed there were like crystals in there, and it wasn't smooth. It wasn't just like powder. So I looked at it and there was glass in there. And Amazon hadn't contacted me to say that it was a defective product. So if I had made that drink and I had just drunk it, I would have suffered. Maybe I could have even died. But then I contacted them and then they said, oh yes, we were going to send a notice actually that this product is being recalled. You can just throw it out and we'll refund you. So sometimes if you don't watch the news or if you don't know what's happening, it can be dangerous. So that's why I watch the news and I read these books, so that I can learn, because I've been hurt and disappointed in my journey in Canada. And I don't want to be hurt and disappointed anymore. I want things to work out for me. I want to have a good paid job. I want to own my own home. I want to travel. And I still miss my country. I still miss Zimbabwe when I see the pictures of it, when I see the land, when I see the wildlife. Do you think I don't miss it? Of course I miss it. It's not like things have worked out for me here. When you graduate, you expect to be able to be independent, buy your own home, pay your own bills, and you expect to be able to save something for retirement. But many of us are in the same position. There's many seniors who can't afford to retire because life didn't work out for them. People are not realistic here. When you graduate, they expect you to come here and take the menial jobs, take the jobs paying $11.25 an hour. They're not realistic. So we must take those jobs, but other people must get the jobs paying $70,000 a year, $80,000 a year. After 22 years in this country, I'm still in minimum wage, doing all the right things, making all the right decisions, spending money on the right things, on my education, on the basics, on being a good citizen, and I'm not getting the promotions. The people who are getting the promotions are the ones doing the gift card scams and all that in the banks. So what kind of society are they building here? It's like the pot calling the kettle black, because in Zimbabwe the corruption is rife, but look at what's happening here in Canada. It's really not fair to people like me. It really isn't fair. But if the CEOs want things to change and they want things to get better, including the church, it has to start at the top, because they are the ones making the decisions. They are the ones who can bring about the cultural change. And they're not doing it because their pockets are being lined, so they don't care. So it's becoming like Zimbabwe. People are moving into gated communities. People are having wars, police patrolling our streets, outside our schools. It never used to be like that because they don't want to change. So they're keeping it as it is. These books are not for people who like the status quo. These books are for people who, like me, who want to make things better, not just for ourselves, but for communities as well, so that we can learn the cultural nuances and then we can speak to them as equals, as partners. Because when I came to Canada and Teresa Bowman told me I have an attitude of entitlement, what was I going to say? I was new to the country. I hadn't been here that long. I didn't know too much about how things work. But now I can say, you know what, Teresa? I have my CHRP. I have my CHRL. Look at the volunteering I've done. Look at the boards I've sat on. Look at what I've accomplished in Canada. So now you speak to me as an equal. Don't tell me I have an attitude of entitlement, because I never did. And even when I came to this country, I never went and asked the church to help me. I never went and claimed refugee status. I never went and sponged off people. So I was shocked when she said that to me. Because coming from Zimbabwe, I thought people at that executive level would have more compassion, empathy, and understanding for me, but they didn't. And I tried to do the opposite. So whatever I did in Zimbabwe for my executives, I did the same things here in Canada. I organized surprise parties when John de Gagne adopted his baby girl from China. I organized an event for him. I organized gifts and a surprise get-together. I did all those things. And he was surprised. He said thank you to me. But not everybody likes it. So we have to learn about what they like here and what they don't like. Some people think that you're trying to curry favor. If I had to live my life over, I would never leave that box of chocolates for Credit Suisse. It created more headaches than it was worth. I did it out of the goodness of my heart, and they took it as an insult. They put their lawyers onto me. So why do you accept the gift and say, yes, it's fine, and we support you, and yes, everything's okay, and then send me a cease and desist? It doesn't make sense. But anyway, that's how life is here, and we have to be willing to change and to grow. And when I tell people in South Africa, even when I write to my friends there, or when I tell the leadership adverts what they're doing to me, they can't believe it. They're like, they're treating you so badly. I'm like, yeah, it's not only me. It's a lot of the graduates that come here. And they've told me that. They said it happens to our graduates in Canada, in Australia. People end up going back because we can't even make enough to make ends meet. And that's not fair to us. If you don't want us in your country, why do you bring us in and then treat us badly? Because we come here with good intentions. We come here to work hard, to make a difference in our communities, to help others, and to better our own lives. And we're not altruistic. We're not doing it just to say, oh yeah, my life can suffer and everyone else's life can get better. That's not the reason that we're here. We left those countries because we were leaving communist governments, and we were leaving this great divide between the rich and the poor. And we come here, I come here, and you put me back into that same position. So that's not fair to me. That's what I want to say to the leaders of the Catholic Church, the leaders in the Great Reset who organized this World Economic Forum. We want things to change for us, and I want things to change for me. I'm willing to help people, yes, and I do it through my speaking, I do it through my volunteering, but I want those financial rewards and the financial returns, and it means a lot to me. I don't see why my father, who grew up in apartheid and racism, can own an Alfa Romeo and build a house, and I can't. It's lousy. It's absolutely unfair and it's unjust.